Ever been to one of those secluded cabins where your phone signal drops to zilch and the nearest human is miles away? It sounds like a perfect getaway, right? Well, that's what Mark and his girlfriend Emily thought too. They were in their late 20s, city folks yearning for a break from their hectic schedules. Little did they know, their peaceful retreat would morph into a living nightmare. They found this quaint little cabin listed on a popular rental site. The pictures showed a cozy interior with rustic charm, nestled deep in the heart of a dense forest. The reviews were all glowing. Seclusion, tranquility, a perfect spot to reconnect with nature. So they booked it for a long weekend, packed their bags and set off, eager for a serene escape. The drive took them deeper and deeper into the forest, the paved road turning into gravel and then just a dirt path. They finally reached the cabin late in the afternoon. It looked just like the pictures, perhaps even better, with the golden rays of the setting sun casting a warm glow on the wooden structure. They unloaded their stuff and settled in, excited for the adventure ahead. Night fell quickly in the forest. With no city lights to dim the stars, the sky was a mesmerizing canvas of twinkling lights. They decided to light a fire in the cabin's fireplace, roast marshmallows, and just enjoy each other's company. It was perfect, or so it seemed. Around midnight, as they were about to turn in, they heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible rustling outside. Probably just an animal, Mark reassured Emily, but she wasn't convinced. The rustling grew louder, now accompanied by what sounded like footsteps crunching on dry leaves. Mark, trying to play the brave boyfriend, grabbed a flashlight and stepped out onto the porch. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but trees and shadows. "See? Nothing," he said, trying to sound confident. Emily reluctantly agreed, and they went back inside, locking the door behind them. They climbed into bed, trying to shake off the eerie feeling. Just as they started to doze off, there was a loud bang on the door, followed by a series of frantic knocks. They both shot up, hearts pounding. Who could it be at this hour, in the middle of nowhere? "Who's there?" Mark shouted, his voice wavering. No response, just more knocking. Gathering all the courage he could muster, Mark crept towards the door, Emily clinging to his arm. He peered through the peephole but saw nothing. The knocking continued, more desperate now. "Call the police," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Mark's heart sank as he realized their phones had no signal out here. They were completely cut off. The only option was to confront whoever or whatever was outside. Mark took a deep breath and slowly opened the door. There was no one there, just the dark, silent forest. He stepped out, flashlight in hand, scanning the area. Suddenly, the light caught something, a figure standing just at the edge of the trees, too far to make out any details. It stood there, motionless, watching. "Who are you? What do you want?" Mark called out, but the figure didn't move. A chill ran down his spine. He backed into the cabin, slamming the door shut and bolting it. "There's someone out there," he said to Emily, his voice barely above a whisper. The knocking resumed, more insistent this time. They huddled together, terrified, as the minutes dragged on. The banging grew louder, more aggressive. It seemed to come from all around, echoing through the cabin. They could hear whispers now, unintelligible but undeniably human. Mark grabbed the fire poker, his hands shaking. "We have to get out of here," he said. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. They quickly packed a few essentials and made a dash for their car. The knocking stopped as soon as they stepped outside. The figure was gone. They drove through the night, not stopping until they reached civilization. Exhausted and shaken, they reported the incident to the local authorities, but nothing ever came of it. The cabin's owner claimed no one had ever had such an experience before. Mark and Emily never went back, and their once cherished memories of that cabin trip were forever tainted by the terror they endured. What was it that stalked them that night? A prankster? A madman? Or something far more sinister? They may never know, but one thing is certain. Some places are best left undisturbed. Picture this, a long stretch of deserted highway, the sun dipping below the horizon, and the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. Tom, a seasoned truck driver, had been on the road for hours, transporting goods from one state to another. He had seen it all, the good, the bad, and the downright weird. But nothing could have prepared him for the chilling encounter he was about to have. Tom was a no-nonsense kind of guy. He liked his job, enjoyed the solitude of the open road, and found a certain peace in the monotony of long-haul driving. It was just him, his rig, and the endless miles of asphalt. He always stuck to his route, but this time a major accident had forced him to take a detour through a less traveled road. As he navigated the winding road through dense woods, he noticed a figure standing on the side of the road up ahead. It was a woman dressed in a light-colored dress, her thumb out, hoping for a ride. Tom slowed down and pulled over. He had heard the stories. Picking up hitchhikers could be dangerous. But something about her seemed off. She looked scared, desperate. He rolled down the window. "You need a ride?" he asked. She nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "Please, can you take me to the next town? I got lost," she said, her voice trembling. Tom hesitated for a moment, but then unlocked the passenger door. "Hop in," he said. She climbed in, and he noticed her clothes were wet and her hair disheveled, as if she'd been caught in a storm. But the weather had been clear all day. As they drove, Tom tried to make small talk. "What's your name?" he asked. "Anna," she replied softly. She didn't offer much more, staring straight ahead, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The silence was uncomfortable, but Tom figured she was just shaken up. "What were you doing out there all alone?" he pressed gently. I don't remember," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Tom decided not to push her further. They drove in silence for a while, the only sound being the hum of the engine and the tires on the road. After about 20 minutes, Tom glanced over to check on his passenger, but the seat was empty. He slammed on the brakes, his heart racing. How could she have just disappeared? He got out of the truck and looked around, calling her name, but there was no sign of Anna. She had vanished without a trace. Confused and a bit shaken, Tom got back in his truck and drove to the next town. He found a diner, parked his rig, and went inside. He needed to clear his head and figure out what had just happened. He told the waitress about his encounter, hoping she might have some answers. Her face went pale. "You saw her too?" she whispered. "Anna, she disappeared on this road years ago. They say she drowned in the river nearby, trying to escape. Something. People have seen her hitchhiking ever since, but she always vanishes before reaching town." Tom felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't believe in ghosts, but what else could explain what he had just experienced? He finished his coffee, thanked the waitress, and headed back to his truck. The rest of his drive was uneventful, but he couldn't shake the eerie feeling. Over the years, Tom tried to rationalize what he saw that night. Maybe it was a hallucination from being too tired, or maybe it was some elaborate prank. But deep down, he knew he had encountered something beyond the realm of the natural. He never took that detour again and warned other truckers to avoid that stretch of road. Whether they believed him or not, he didn't care. He had seen Anna with his own eyes, and that was enough to change him forever. The highway holds many secrets, and some of them are best left unexplored. Next time you're driving alone at night and see a hitchhiker, think twice before stopping. You never know who or what you might be picking up. Imagine moving into your dream apartment in a charming, historic building, only to find that it holds a dark, mysterious past. That's exactly what happened to Sarah, a young professional who had just relocated to New York City for a new job. She had always been drawn to old buildings with character and history, so when she found an apartment in a pre-war brownstone in Greenwich Village, she was thrilled. The apartment was perfect. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. The landlord, Mr. Carlson, was an elderly man who seemed kind enough, though a bit peculiar. He mentioned the building's history with a hint of pride, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he wasn't telling the whole story. Sarah moved in on a sunny Saturday morning. She spent the day unpacking and arranging her new place, excited to start this new chapter of her life. By evening, she was exhausted but content. She made herself a cup of tea and settled on the couch to relax. As she sipped her tea, she thought she heard faint footsteps above her. She shrugged it off, assuming it was just a neighbor. The next few days were busy with work and settling in. Sarah met a few of her neighbors, including a friendly couple across the hall and an artist who lived on the top floor. Everyone seemed nice, but there was an unspoken tension whenever she mentioned her apartment. She noticed odd looks and hurried changes of subject, but she didn't think much of it. One night, about a week after moving in, Sarah was jolted awake by the sound of furniture being dragged across the floor above her. She checked the time. 3 a.m. Annoyed, she tried to go back to sleep, but the noise persisted. It sounded like someone was rearranging the entire apartment. The next morning, she decided to ask Mr. Carlson about it. "Is there someone new living above me?" she asked. Mr. Carlson's face paled. "No, that apartment is vacant," he replied. "It has been for years." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "But I heard noises. It's an old building," Mr. Carlson said quickly. "It creaks and groans. You'll get used to it." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The noises continued almost every night. Footsteps, dragging sounds, and occasionally, what sounded like faint whispers. She asked her neighbors, but they all seemed reluctant to talk about it. One evening, Sarah decided to investigate. She went up to the supposedly vacant apartment. The door was locked, but she could hear the unmistakable sound of someone moving around inside. She knocked, calling out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" The noises stopped abruptly. After a few moments of silence, she turned to leave when the door creaked open slightly. Her heart pounding, Sarah pushed the door open and stepped inside. The apartment was empty, covered in a thick layer of dust. The air was stale, and it was clear no one had lived there for a long time. She walked through the rooms, her footsteps echoing eerily. She was about to leave when she noticed something strange, a set of fresh footprints in the dust leading to the corner of the living room. They stopped abruptly, as if the person had vanished into thin air. Sarah felt a surge of fear. She rushed back to her apartment and locked the door, her mind racing. She decided to do some research on the building's history. What she found was chilling. Decades ago, a tenant named Emily had lived in the apartment above her. She was a recluse, rarely seen by anyone. One day, she simply disappeared without a trace. Despite numerous investigations, her body was never found, and the case went cold. Convinced that Emily's spirit was haunting the building, Sarah reached out to a local paranormal investigator. The investigator, a woman named Claire, agreed to help. They conducted a seance in the empty apartment, hoping to make contact with Emily's spirit. As they sat in the dimly lit room, Claire called out to Emily. At first, there was nothing but silence. Then the temperature dropped suddenly, and the air grew heavy. The faint sound of a woman's voice filled the room, whispering, "Help me." Claire asked, "Emily, what do you need?" The voice replied, "Find me." Sarah's heart raced. "Where are you, Emily?" The whispers grew louder, more urgent. "In the walls. In the walls." Terrified, Sarah and Claire fled the apartment. The next day, Sarah called Mr. Carlson and told him everything. Reluctantly, he agreed to have the walls of the vacant apartment inspected. What they found was horrifying. Hidden behind a false wall in the living room was a small, secret room. Inside, they discovered the remains of Emily, who had apparently been trapped there and left to die. The police were called, and the investigation reopened. The discovery brought some peace to the building, and the eerie noises ceased. Sarah moved out shortly after, unable to stay in a place with such a dark history. She never forgot the experience and always felt a deep sadness for Emily, the tenant who had been forgotten for so long. If you want to see more horror stories, check out my next video.